Section 24 of The Common Reader. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit Librivox.org. The Common Reader by Virginia Woolf. The Patron and the Crocus. Young men and women beginning to write are generally given the plausible, but utterly impracticable, advice to write what they have to write as shortly as possible, as clearly as possible, and without other thought in their minds except to say exactly what is in them. Nobody ever adds on these occasions the one thing needful. And be sure you choose your patron wisely, though that is the gist of the whole matter. For a book is always written for somebody to read, and since the patron is not merely the paymaster, but also in a very subtle and insidious way the instigator and inspirer of what is written, it is of the utmost importance that he should be a desirable man. But who, then, is the desirable man? The patron who will cajole the best out of the writer's brain and bring to birth the most varied and vigorous progeny of which he is capable? Different ages have answered the question differently. The Elizabethans, to speak roughly, chose the aristocracy to write for and the playhouse public. The 18th century patron was a combination of coffee-house wit and Grub Street bookseller. In the 19th century, the great writers wrote for the half-crown magazines and the leisured classes. And looking back and applauding the splendid results of these different alliances, it all seems enviably simple and plain as a pikestaff, compared with our own predicament. For whom should we write? For the present supply of patrons is of unexampled and bewildering variety. There is the daily press, the weekly press, the monthly press, the English public and the American public, the bestseller public and the worst-seller public, the highbrow public and the red-blood public, all now organized, self-conscious entities capable, through their various mouthpieces, of making their needs known and their approval or displeasure felt. Thus the writer who has been moved by the sight of the first crocus in Kensington Gardens has, before he sets pen to paper, to choose from a crowd of competitors the particular patron who suits him best. It is futile to say, dismiss them all, think only of your crocus, because writing is a method of communication, and the crocus is an imperfect crocus until it has been shared. The first man, or the last, may write for himself alone, but he is an exception, and an unenviable one at that, and the gulls are welcome to his works, if the gulls can read them. Granted, then, that every writer has some public or other at the end of his pen. The high-minded will say that it should be a submissive public, accepting obediently whatever he likes to give it. Plausible as the theory sounds, great risks are attached to it, for in that case the writer remains conscious of his public, yet is superior to it. An uncomfortable and unfortunate combination, as the works of Samuel Butler, George Meredith, and Henry James may be taken to prove. Each despised the public, each desired a public, each failed to attain a public, and each wreaked his failure upon the public by a succession, gradually increasing in intensity, of angularities, obscurities, and affectations which no writer, whose patron was his equal and friend, would have thought it necessary to inflict. Their crocuses, in consequence, are tortured plants, beautiful and bright, but with something wry-necked about them, malformed, shriveled on the one side, overblown on the other. A touch of the sun would have done them a world of good. Shall we then rush to the opposite extreme, and accept, if in fancy alone, the flattering proposals which the editors of the Times and the Daily News may be supposed to make us? £20 down for your crocus in precisely 1,500 words, which shall blossom upon every breakfast table from John O'Groats to the Land's End before 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, with the writer's name attached. But will one crocus be enough? And must it not be a very brilliant yellow, to shine so far, to cost so much, and to have one's name attached to it? The press is undoubtedly a great multiplier of crocuses, but if we look at some of those plants, we shall find that they are only very distantly related to the original little yellow or purple flower which pokes up through the grass in Kensington Gardens about this time of year. The newspaper crocus is amazing, but still a very different plant. It fills precisely the space allotted to it. It radiates a golden glow. It is genial, affable, warm-hearted. It is beautifully finished, too, for let nobody think that the art of our dramatic critic of the Times, or of Mr. Lind of the Daily News, is an easy one. It is no despicable feat to start 1,000,000 brains running at 9 o'clock in the morning, to give 2,000,000 eyes something bright and brisk and amusing to look at. But the night comes, and these flowers fade. So little bits of glass lose their luster if you take them out of the sea. Great prima donnas howl like hyenas if you shut them up in telephone boxes, and the most brilliant of articles, when removed from its element, is dust and sand and the husks of straw. Journalism, embalmed in a book, is unreadable. The patron we want, then, is one who will help us to preserve our flowers from decay. But as his qualities change from age to age, and it needs considerable integrity and conviction not to be dazzled by the pretensions or bamboozled by the persuasions of the competing crowd, this business of patron finding is one of the tests and trials of authorship. To know whom to write for is to know how to write. Some of the modern patron's qualities are, however, fairly plain. The writer will require, at this moment, it is obvious, a patron with a book-reading habit rather than the play-going habit. Nowadays, too, he must be instructed in the literature of other times and races. But there are other qualities which our special weaknesses and tendencies demand in him. There is the question of indecency, for instance, which plagues us and puzzles us much more than it did the Elizabethans. The 20th century patron must be immune from shock. He must distinguish infallibly between the little clod of manure which sticks to the crocus of necessity and that which is plastered to it out of bravado. He must be a judge, too, of those social influences which inevitably play so large a part in modern literature, and able to say which matures and fortifies, which inhibits and makes sterile. Further, there is emotion for him to pounce on, and in no department can he do more useful work than in bracing a writer against sentimentality on the one hand, and a craven fear of expressing his feeling on the other. It is worse, he will say, and perhaps more common, to be afraid of feeling than to feel too much. He will add, perhaps, something about language, and point out how many words Shakespeare used, and how much grammar Shakespeare violated, while we, though we keep our fingers so demurely to the black notes on the piano, have not appreciably improved upon Antony and Cleopatra. And if you can forget your sex altogether, he will say, so much the better. A writer has none. But all this is by the way, elementary and disputable. The patron's prime quality is something different, only to be expressed, perhaps, by the use of that convenient word which cloaks so much, atmosphere. It is necessary that the patron should shed and envelop the crocus in an atmosphere which makes it appear a plant of the very highest importance, so that to misrepresent it is the one outrage not to be forgiven this side of the grave. He must make us feel that a single crocus, if it be a real crocus, is enough for him, that he does not want to be lectured, elevated, instructed, or improved, that he is sorry that he bullied Carlyle into vociferation, Tennyson into idyllics, and Ruskin into insanity, that he is now ready to efface himself, or assert himself, as his writers require, that he is bound to them by a more than maternal tie, that they are twins indeed, one dying if the other dies, one flourishing if the other flourishes, that the fate of literature depends upon their happy alliance, all of which proves, as we began by saying, that the choice of a patron is of the highest importance. But how to choose rightly? How to write well? Those are the questions. End of section 24. Recording by Olivia.